Hi, my name's Dave, and welcome back to 1 Acre in the Napa Valley for episode number 7, pre-harvest. Today is Sunday, September the 14th, and it's a nice, cool, foggy morning here in the Napa Valley, which is a welcome relief from some of the heat that we've had over the past week or so. In fact, it's been so hot, much of the harvest here in the valley has been taking place a little bit earlier than usual. In fact, my neighbor right next door is picking her Zinfandel grapes this morning. But let's take a look at our little vine and see how he's doing since we left him last about the end of July. Here we are, we can find him again. It's always easy to identify him with the little bow tie that we put on. As you can see, the fruit is nice and plump. It's not shriveling even because of the heat that we had. I've been irrigating quite a bit though, just to keep the vines nicely hydrated. When it comes to the harvest, and that's the big decision that we have to make this time of the year, is when do we harvest? There's a number of different factors that kind of all fit together, but maybe one of the most important ones is how the fruit actually tastes. Now back in July when we tasted the fruit, even though it had some color at the time of aeration, it was still a little sour. But let's take a sample of it now, or I'll take a sample of it now, taste-wise, and see how it's doing. Take a couple of the berries here. What we have now is there's not only nice sugar to it, but there's also good flavor to it, and that's what we're really looking for now. There's a couple other things that we can use as kind of guiding factors as far as the fruit's concerned, and I'll grab a white piece of paper here so you can see them. One has to do with the color of the seeds. Now if you look here, and the camera can get a kind of a close-up on it, you can see the seed is nice and dark, whereas before the seeds were green, and the pulp is separated from it. The other factor when it comes to determining ripeness is the actual color from the skins. As you can see, we got quite a bit of color also coming off of these. I just kind of chewed them up a little bit, but we got a lot of color that is visible too. So those two things are also indicators as far as the ripeness of the fruit. But let's do one other thing now. Let's take an actual brick sample of the fruit and see where we are. Now you might remember, I saved a little chart from July. You might remember the last time we took a sample of the bricks. This was a representation of the bricks meter refractometer. On July 27th, we were at bricks of about 13 degrees. So I'll take a little sample in the bag now, and let's see how we're doing with the bricks at the moment. Usually when you take a sample, you take a berry from different parts of the cluster and different parts of the vine as we go along, and we can kind of get an idea of kind of the overall sample throughout the vine itself. Now what's interesting is there can be variation even within the same vine, but there's certainly variation within the vineyard itself. So one vine might have a certain amount of bricks level, and the others might be either greater or less depending on where they are in the vineyard. So when we take just one sample like this, it's not always representative of the whole vineyard. In fact, what you might look at here too, I'm just going to lay this on the white piece of paper, but you might be able to see here we've got a lot of color to the juice already too. You can see that just with the skins contributing a lot to the color, more so than before. Well, we talked about the bricks meter refractometer before, but what I'll do is take a little piece of the plastic off there, and we'll put some of the juice right on that and see how it comes out this morning. Kind of steady that a little bit. You just flip the little lid, and I'm going to stand up. There's not really any sunlight, direct sunlight, but I'll just kind of stand up and get a little reading and see where we are. And now this is doing very well. The sugar is probably just a little bit above 25, which is a very good sugar level for this one particular plant. So I'll draw in what I saw. We were probably up just about in this neighborhood here. So since July, it's really come up quite a bit. And we're right there, right at the edge of being able to pick. So, like I mentioned, this particular plant is just a little bit above 25. Now, a few days ago, I sampled the entire vineyard. What I do is the same thing you saw me do here, but I take about a 100 berry sample, sometimes a 200 berry sample, out of every plant front to back in the vineyard. And what I found was a couple of days ago, the vineyard in its entirety had a Brix level of about 23.2. So that means that it could go just a little bit longer. It could pick right now, but it could let it go just a little bit longer. What we find too is if it, sometimes the Brix levels will maintain what they have while the flavor develops a little bit more. So there's always that kind of risk. So I'll watch it over the next week or two, and if the weather stays like this, we might be able to let the hang time go just a little bit longer. But sugar is, of course, one very important thing when it comes to the fruit and when to pick. But something that really makes the Napa Valley special, as far as the weather is concerned, has to do with the acidity levels and how that's related to the cool nights and mornings that we see. And you might remember back to, let's see, it was episode number 3, talked about photosynthesis, and on the back of the little leaves here, on the back of the leaves were those little valves that we called the stomata, or a stomate. Now, why that is important, because it really factors into how the acid is retained in the fruit. When the plant is hot and it transpires water to keep it cool, the little valves on the back of the leaves open up. And when that takes place, that actually has a bearing or an effect on the acidity. When that's going on, the valves are open, the acidity levels in the fruit actually drop. But when the plant is cool, like it is this morning, with the fog like this, it's probably about, when I looked at the thermometer, it was about 58 degrees or so, maybe about 60 degrees. When that's the case, all the little valves on the bottom of the leaves will tend to close down. And what happens then is the acid levels are retained, much more so than they would be if we were in a climate where it was much warmer during the evening hours. So what we have in the Napa Valley is very warm days. Today it'll probably get up close to 90 degrees, but cool nights. And so what happens is during the day the sugar levels go up nicely and the acids drop correspondingly, but at night when it gets cold, little valves close and the acid retains a little bit higher than it would in other places. So because of that we get higher sugars and very often relatively higher acids. Now something that was a question I noticed on episode number 6 recently was about pests. What do I do to keep the birds or squirrels or raccoons, that type of thing, from the fruit? And so there's not really much of a problem with squirrels or raccoons. Deer are up in the mountains primarily, not so much here. But the birds can be a problem. So because of that, if you look up above here, you'll notice that I've actually got a netting that goes all the way across the vineyard. Some vineyards, what they'll tend to do, and this is typical for bigger vineyards, is they'll take the netting and wrap it around the row itself. But I do something a little bit different. It may not be practical to do in bigger vineyards, but I stretch the netting all the way across the top, creating a canopy. And because of that, then, I can get in underneath, or when we go to harvest, we can just lift up the netting at the very end, and that way we can get in without disturbing it. And in doing so, then when a netting wraps a row, sometimes it can kind of compress the leaves and compress the fruit up against it. But this isn't the easiest thing to do, so I kind of had to devise a way to stretch it across like this. And so what I did was I put together a piece of PVC like this. Each of these are as long as the row, and then the T's here actually sit on top of the vertical line post. So when I put the netting up, I just stretch these PVC holders across like this, each one of them sitting like that, and then I pull the netting across and hook the netting to each of the line posts like this and create a canopy underneath. Well, thanks again for being here with me in the Napa Valley, and we'll see you at harvest.